special council meeting, and then we'll go into the closed meeting following that. So I will call to order the General Purposes Committee meeting for today being April 6, 2021. On the agenda, Councillor McNulty wants to add an item on the item of food trucks in Stevenson. Food trucks in Stevenson. So may I have a motion accordingly to amend the to approve the agenda with that amendment? Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? All those in favor, opposed, carried.
Sir, just discussion. Was there any details that came out about that added item before the meeting? I don't think I read anything on the added item.
No, you didn't. No, there wasn't. It's just, and I think you'll find it's just a matter for a referral. So may I have a motion on the minutes? Moved and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor, opposed, carried. There's one liquor item. Number one, designated speaker is Carly Williams. Carly, anything to add to your report?
I have nothing to add to the report, just to note that I believe the applicant is also on the line to answer any council's questions about this specific application.
Yeah, okay, so that's moved and seconded, but I just want to say that you may have received a note. There's actually, the note said that there were 4 people, but actually it's two people, 2 of those are here to answer any questions. Edna Lizotte and Bert Hick, who are both involved in this application, should there be any questions. So, any discussion? All right, we'll call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
That is carried. Then we have the Accelerated Flood Protection Program Concept and Flood Protection Rate Structure Review. We'll turn it over to staff, to Jason Ho, to introduce that.
Mr. Chair, nothing further to add to the report.
What's the timing of this? You've recommended option 1, 50-year recommended. So the current rate, say for multifamily residential, is 145.31. So that's been set for this year?
That is correct.
So if we're talking about increases, we're talking starting next year.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. We would, through the annual utility budget and rate process that comes up in the fall, we would bring that to council with rate increase recommendations.
All right. So we've got a couple of questions. First of all, going to Councillor McNulty.
Yes, thank you, Worship. To you, to staff. So we're collecting on an ongoing basis, and I noticed we've added $10 per year, et cetera, over the years. How much is in the kitty now?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, currently the utility generates about $13 million per year.
13 million. So at the rate of 145.31, we will get our $13 million for this year.
That is correct. Yes.
What would happen if we delayed the implementation of the raise and have a look at this until next year? We would still collect next year at the moment 145.31, correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
With no raise. Is there a pressing manner in order to implement this? Well, immediately, if we endorse it today, then you would implement it for next year. Is there any reason why we couldn't look at it next year again and then think about implementing it then?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, no, there's no particular reason. There's no absolute necessity to accelerate the program at this time, just given the current sea level rise projections.
Okay, Your Worship, I think it's a very valuable program. Obviously, we need to be looking at it and implementing it with what we've got. But given the nature of possibly where we're going over the next 6 months, 8 months, we don't know where we're going. Whether the implement, maybe this, we should endorse in principle the good work of staff and think about revisiting this time next year when we want to implement the actual increase in the annual rate. I'm not sure how others feel about it, but looking at it, because this goes on, I know it's on a different series of monies where people pay their utilities, but it's still one taxpayer, and I'm just wondering whether this is where we can give the taxpayer a break, given we did a necessary budget with the RCMP and the fire rescue before, and this could be postponed possibly for 1 year, but adopt in principle, and staff could continue to work on planning for what we're going to do to increase flood protection.
Well, to staff, if we adopt this as a policy, isn't it like our long-term financial management strategy where you will bring in the rates in the fall for 2022, and we can adopt the increase, or we can have it more or less at that time? Isn't that
Mr. Chair,
what it's going to be?
Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Yeah. So in answer,
My question, Your Worship, though, if we wanted to do some work like we've done on the South Dyke, and let's say wanted to extend that work, we wouldn't do any work unless we knew we had the funds. That's what I'm worried about. So we'd have to only do the work that we have money for.
Well, going back to the original question, how much do we have in the reserve at this time in the utility reserve?
Mr. Chair, there is currently about $28 million in the drainage reserve.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right. So next speaker is Councillor Wolf.
Okay, thank you. Through your worship to staff, I have I think 3 main questions, but it was good to hear the feedback that was provided from the last council set of questions there. I definitely see the need to fund the project outlined in this report. I also feel more needs to be funded, so I'll get to that. I also definitely see the urgency that this isn't something that we would delay. Looking at the graph that's provided, figure 1 on page 35, shows a pretty alarming uptick on projected sea level rise. Even the lowest estimate is way above where we are right now. Even the low estimate is showing within our great-grandchildren's lifetime that it would rise 2 meters. So pretty serious to deal with this. The questions I have, there's one on page 38, 39, and 40. So my first concern is actually in the kind of description in the first paragraph on page 36, where we talk about this being a $1 billion project, but the exception there is it's not including habitat compensation. So I'll get to that in the questions here. The first one is on page 38. That's our table 2. I know staff are giving us options on the columns, but I'm curious, was there any options to the row? I'm curious, I see how the industrial commercial land has been broken up, but I'm curious, were staff looking into breaking anything even further, even making a bit more detailed? So I'm looking at the second row called single family residential and agriculture. And then I'm thinking of someone with a small rancher built 50 years ago and comparing that to a 20,000 square foot house on a 10-acre parcel that's selling for $8 million right now. So seeing that the rates are the same for those two, correct me if I'm wrong, or we're staff looking into potentially more breakdown in the classes.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, yes, that is a category that is a bit complex due to the just the broad range of types of uses that those properties involve. So that's going to involve a more complicated and more in-depth review, which we'll be looking at doing in the future.
Okay, I'll hold on to that. I'll come back. And on page 39, there's at the second paragraph from the top on next steps, talks about hiring 5 additional regular full-time staff. Further down, it talks about hiring 5 temporary full-time construction staff. So that's 10 staff for the program that's outlined in the report. But like I mentioned on page 36, what's not included here is the work related to habitat compensation from dike work. So we're staff looking into or providing us an option on what would be the number of staff to have the habitat compensation included in this report. Would it be 5 plus 2? And I know that there is mention here of when this, this is on the next page, page 40, when a separate report will come back related to habitat offsetting strategy. So the question is, when is that future? And could we not have the cost estimate for how many positions today, so that if we're talking about the millions of dollars, that we're in the range, as opposed to saying, oh, it's 30 now, but actually it's going to be 45. Where I feel, anyway, I'll let staff respond to those 2 points.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, that separate report is anticipated later this year. The positions with respect to the environmental staff has been incorporated into this calculation. What has not been incorporated is actually the actual scope of works of those environmental compensation works, because they really vary from area to area, so that's something that we'll have to take a further look at to determine the full scope in order to determine a reasonable cost.
Great, then just to clarify that point, so the staff needed for whatever the scope is, that the staff is included, but not the infrastructure and hours of work for those staff? Or you could just clarify maybe what is not included?
Through the chair, that is correct. So the staff required to plan and manage that process for environmental compensation has been included, but not the actual implementation of those works.
Great, thank you very much.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you, through the chair. So, when did we approve the Dike Master Plan?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, Dike Master Plan phases 3 and 5 were most recently approved in 2019, and Dike Master Plan phase 2, I believe, a year or 2 prior to that, and Dike Master Plan phase 1, I believe, 4 or 5 years prior.
Okay. So what's changed since then? Like, so suddenly we had a plan, we had a strategy. Part of that strategy was a 75-year thing, and so now you're proposing to reduce it by a third. So I'm just curious, what's changed now, and then why do we need to do it this year? Can we maybe defer it, say, 18 months, 2 years? So once the pandemic's over, and, do it then. So, like, we're not falling off a cliff in 50 years specifically, or 52. Like, I can see the benefit in bringing it down from 75 to 50, but if we didn't bring it down from 75 to 52, are we any worse off, really? Are we still within the zone? Are we still in the range?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, it's not absolutely necessary to accelerate the program this year, just given there's no change in sea level rise projections. It would, however, put the city in a better position and to be better protected well in advance of sea level rise. And it would correspond to comments we received from residents through the public consultation process for the flood strategy and Dike Master Plan.
Okay, all right. And certainly I can see the importance of it, and I know that this is an important thing for us. We definitely hear that. we also definitely heard from taxpayers that, that right now they need a break. And so it looks like we're also more heavily weighting it on big industrial properties. So the bigger the property, the more heavily weighted it gets to them. But those properties, it falls to the tenant that's in it. So in a big property, it may have lots of little tenants, and those are the small businesses that are really hurting right now that we've been hearing from. So, like maybe if we were to defer this for 18 months, then it comes on to the following year. It gives everyone that little break, but we're still moving ahead with our diking plan, and we still get the acceleration. I think maybe that's more what we need right now to give people that break, and because the next one we're about to look at later is also adding on another layer of costs and taxes to people, increasing, property costs. So, certainly I'd like to see this deferred for 18 months and revisit it.
Mr. Chair, if I just perhaps add a few comments related to Councillor Liu's questions and comments there as well, maybe some of the previous questions as well. Just for a little bit of background information, this is in response to a council referral that came when we brought forward the 2020 budget in November 2019, where I think there was some concern expressed that yes, it would be good to meet the objectives of the flood management strategy and the Dike Master Plans that we accelerate the funding for this. Subsequent to that, when we brought forward the utility rates in 2020 for this year, Council approved a 0 increase in the drainage and diking utility as recommended by staff in response to the COVID situation. And so we have effectively delayed the response on this referral and the acceleration of the increases for 1 year to date, and that can certainly be repeated or continued at Council's discretion. And certainly, I think the key message with the recommendation in here and the report that there is a longer-term strategy that addresses the need. But yes, as I think Mr. Ho has identified, there is no immediate short-term need to accelerate the funding in the 1-2 year time frame, but it's certainly something you want to keep your eye on going forward beyond that.
Okay, thank you.
See, what we could do, Councillor, is to receive this for information and agree that it would be re-examined in so many months, years, time down the road, or refer it back for that matter. Okay, so we've got Councillor Au.
Yes, Your Worship, I really support the direction that staff recommended, that I think we have to accelerate the dike improvement project. However, I also feel uncomfortable that we do anything to increase the rate in mid-year with very practically no consultation with the public. If I look at this recommendation of option 1, the increase for single-family houses will be 12% per year. I think it's a huge increase. So I would feel very uncomfortable if we adopt this without consultation with the public. And I also feel that the public has to realize the need for the dike improvement. And even though this is very vital to the safety of the community, but I think the general public might still not have enough understanding of the need for it. So while I'm supportive of the general direction, I am hesitant to support the approval of this right now. I recommend that we have further consultation before we do anything. And also, I will also recommend that in the future, we need to have a separate item in the budget for this dike improvement, because right now it's being lumped into utility budget and rates. Sometimes people cannot distinguish one from the other. So I think this is a very important item for Richmond, and I think it should be a standalone item for the public to be aware of.
Well, on that item, on that last note, it is in the utility budget, but it is identified by itself, isn't it?
Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Yeah. So it's not a separate mailing, but it's a separate item on the bill. Okay, doke. Now we've got Councillor Steves.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not in favor of postponing. I think we need to get on with this. The graph that's shown in the report, I think, underestimates what's happening.
on a world scale in terms of climate change, we're heading for 3 degrees, not 2, and we're doing very little about it. So I think that the sea level rise graphs are probably outdated because they're based on the 2 degree limit. The other thing I want to comment about is the taxes. I was talking to a house builder that's just tearing a house down 2 doors down from us in Steveston Highway this morning, and he said the average home in Steveston, believe it or not, a lot, where they tear a house down, a tear down, is now going for $1.5 million for a 33-foot lot. The average increase in property just in the Steveston lot has gone up about $200,000 or $300,000 since COVID-19 came in. So I think if values of properties go up, it's certainly if people have to pay higher taxes to protect those properties, I think it's valid to do so. He said that the 60-foot lot properties had gone up too, but believe it or not, the smaller properties he said were just totally going off the deep end. So I think that if house owners are making a couple of $100,000 a year in increased value of their property, they can help pay for protecting the property for flood control. The final thing I want to say is that in terms of environmental considerations, Richmond once was the salmon capital of the world, yet Richmond has destroyed more salmon habitat than any city in British Columbia, probably 4 or 5 or 10 times more. It started in 1907 when the dikes were built and they wiped out the chum salmon population that used to spawn in all the sloughs that went across Richmond. But we finished it off in that between 1968 and around 1981 or 82 when we put in the pump stations. At that time, until the pump station there, we had flood boxes that opened and closed as the tide went in and out. The salmon didn't spawn in the canals like they used to, but the salmon fry, particularly the Chinook salmon, were in every ditch and every canal all across Richmond, and we wiped them out with our pump stations because they no longer could get in. So I'm suggesting that there is a way of compensating for that. It's coming on the Parks agenda at the next meeting, and we're trying to open up the Terranova Slough. And I think the best compensation for lost habitat, the idea of the Terranova Slough is if it worked, we would do it in all the sloughs in East Richmond and wherever we could to let the salmon spawn in Richmond again. And I think we should be looking at that as a solution to all the widening of the dikes, because in terms of habitat, the little strip of habitat that's adjacent to our dikes is very minor to the habitat that was lost when all the sloughs were closed up in the 1970s. So I just wanted to pass that on to staff. The report coming to Parks probably should be at this discussion stage, because the main benefit is to repair a small fraction of the habitat loss that we've had in the past and make up for any habitat loss we might have in the future. So just for Jason's information, I think it'd be good if you take a look at that aspect of it.
Okay. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. I will be supporting this report because I think we have to have the dikes up to snuff. If there is no dikes, there is no Richmond. And I'm the first to vote against tax increases, as you all know, but this one is different. The staff have come up with a way to prorate the tax increase on this utility so that it's fair, so that if you have a 13,000 square foot house, you're going to pay more, and that's fair. You're protecting your property. And when I look at the note that, we need $30 million by 2031, I mean, every time I drive the South Dike and go up to the new dike area, I feel safer as a Richmondite. I do not think we should delay this. Absolutely not. We must go ahead with this, and we must be ready so that when other funding comes in from the federal government, from the provincial government, we can match it and do our part. So I would encourage everybody to go ahead and vote yes for this today, because it's not going to be implemented till next year anyhow, which gives us plenty of time to educate the public. And they really need to understand how important the dikes are. Thank you.
Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to staff. Earlier, there was a question on the single-family residential and agricultural class, and I believe you responded to say that there was in-depth review going to be coming. And when is that? What's the timeline for that?
Through the chair to Councilor McPhail, we'll be looking at doing that over the next year or so.
Thank you. I think that would be really important information to have. Well, there's no doubt in my mind that, the flood protection is important. But I think that we've all heard very loud and clearly from homeowners and small businesses that they've kind of been taxed to the max. And I agree with some of the comments made earlier about, more transparency, more consultation. I think we need to do, and I think we have a real opportunity to consult with the public and to convey to them the importance of the dikes in Richmond and the plan that we have. So I think that a delay of a year or so is not such a bad thing to get all our ducks in a row and to come up with a plan that really engages the community and the business community especially. If you look at the chart, they are seeing extreme rises in their taxes. So I think we have an opportunity to do some work with the community before this is implemented. Thank you.
I'd ask staff to comment on the consultation that has taken place to date. Has there been any substantial consultation, or has this been a matter of, people knowledgeable in the field just coming up with new rates?
Mr. Chair, there has not been any particular consultation in terms of the rate classes. As we have done since 2015 through the annual rate development process, we have been trying to improve the equity of the drainage and diking fee by introducing classes to make it work for everybody.
All right. Councilor McNulty?
I'd like to move an amendment or add an amendment. Given the nature of the discussion, I think there are two issues on the table. I didn't hear anybody say they weren't in favor of implementing the program. And so I think we need to add a number 3 and a number 4.
First of all, just a minute. Can we get what is the recommendation? Let's get it on the floor, and then I'll come to you for your amendment to add your other items. I think it's just easier that way. Someone want to
move that?
So I see Councillor Day, and is moving it and it's seconded. So it's moved and seconded. Now, Councillor McNulty, you want to move an amendment to add things?
Well, I want to add item number 3 and 4. I don't want to detract from the report. Everybody speaks in favor when we know how important the issue is. I don't think anybody spoke against the importance of the issue. I think we need to do one. We need to add a number 3 that a public consultation program be developed immediately to go out to the public with the importance of this particular issue. And the other one is that this be put on the agenda in terms of, as staff said, the fee structure on page 38 would not be implemented until next year anyhow, that it be put on an agenda for next year because we may want to increase the fee structure given the feedback from the public on how important it is and how much people are willing to pay for safety of and flood protection in Richmond. We may change the rates and go even higher and shorten the distance, shorten the time. Instead of 75 years or 50 years or 52, we may want to move it to 40 years. So I think that needs to be put on the table. Staff have done a good job on page 38, but that may change slightly next year. And we may add $20 a household, or we may, whatever. We don't know what we will do at that time. But in the meantime, the program can go ahead because we're dealing with this year's budget and this year's amount. And we're not going to collect next year until the end of next year or the following year. Okay. So I think that needs to be added 3 and 4.
I just want to clarify a couple things. For number 3, you're proposing the public consultation plan be developed Now, are you talking
Yes.
about a consultation plan or a communication plan? You're
I
out,
would say both. I think we should allow the public to consult with various stakeholders, and including people like the Harbor Authority, et cetera, and then also a communication plan to the general public.
okay? And so in number 4, we could, I think, accomplish what you're talking about, that the implementation would commence for the tax year 2023. So this fall would be for 2022, and you're talking about it being the year after that for 2023, right?
Yes, because we may change it. It may not be what staff said. It may be higher
Right.
next year.
But that puts it off for a year. I believe that will work.
The funding is going to be done anyhow. So we're not changing funding until then anyhow. So I think we would have a better look at it once we see staff have done good diligent work.
Okay, so we're on the amendment. That's been moved. Is the amendment seconded? It's moved and it is seconded. So right now, I'm just on the amendment. I see, first of all, let's see, I see Councillor Wolf. Are you on the amendment or the main motion? Okay, go ahead.
The amendment.
Go ahead on the amendment.
Thank you. Before my comments, just 2 quick clarification questions to staff on this. Was there not a public consultation through Let's Talk Richmond Dike Master Plan in like the last year or so? Could that be clarified?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, that's correct. We did complete public consultation quite extensively for the flood protection management strategy as well as Dike Master Plan phases 3 and 5 in 2019.
Great, thank you. And my second clarification then is on that table that was just referred to on page 38. I had asked a question about the single-family residential and agricultural, and if that might be split up. And then what I heard from Councillor McNulty was his item number 4, the way I heard it, was he was looking in a delay of the fee structure. So would there be a separation? Like, are staff going to come back to us regardless if we have this amendment? If there is a unified way to separate some single-family residential from single-family agriculture? Is that already in the books to come back if there is a rate class change, or do we need this amendment for that?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we were going to do that review regardless to see if there was any inequity there that needs to be addressed.
Okay, great. Thank you very much to the staff. Just on the amendment, then, I am just speaking to the amendment. I'm going to be opposing it because there is a I could just keep on the topic here. I think the use of the phrase tax break and putting this into a future year when the science is clearly expressing the need to do it now, and staff have come back with the report that we asked them to do, and I'm really appreciative that they did address the discussion that was had at the time of us delaying the drainage fees in the budget. I remember voting against that. It was the only section that we didn't increase, and I think we've already taken action as a council to alleviate the strain from this. But the graph that's in the report doesn't show the option of it going down, the sea level. The sea level is going up, and we need to take action. And if we want the leadership role that we have, then we need to get on this now. So, thanks.
Okay, Councillor Howe.
Yes, Your Worship, I support the idea of doing more public consultation. But I think we have to give the public the idea that this is not already determined. So I have questions about the wordings in item number 4. Can the wording be more flexible and general in the sense that we do not give the idea, the impression to the public that we already determined the rate, and also it will be implemented in 2023. So can the wordings be?
Well, I'll ask Councillor McNulty, but I think that was the idea, wasn't it? That we would say, set as a policy that that's what we plan to charge for 2023. But as was discussed earlier, that amount, like under the long-term financial management strategy, we can change that amount because it's simply a policy that we can change. But that would
Yeah, it can go up. It can actually go up at this time next year. We may deem that we need even more money, and this doesn't talk ourselves in. And I also I want to mention that while I have the floor, is Let's Talk Richmond isn't the only consultation. 90% of Richmond don't use Let's Talk Richmond. And we can't use that as a crutch. We've got to have good consultation.
You're out of
Thank
turn.
you.
I just wanted you to clarify that one point. Go ahead, Councillor Howell.
Yes, so, and I agree that we have to use different channels for the public consultation. I understand that the Public Works have open house for different projects, including the dike improvement. But I think we've never talked to the public about the rate, the increase of the rate. So I think for that, we have to consult with the public. So if the understanding is that we have not determined the rate for 2023, I think that's okay. But we must let the people know that this is not a done deal. Otherwise, they would say that, oh, your consultation is only a show.
I think it would be that this is the plan, and we can deviate from it. I mean, theoretically, it could be lower or something.
Yeah, sure.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the spirit of the motion to amend and delay, but I don't think we can afford to do this. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to vote against the motion to delay for another year because that's how we got in this mess in the first place. Staff have done an absolutely outstanding job. They're already, as they just pointed out, they've done consultation on the public dike plan. They're also continuing to do a review, and there will be plenty of opportunity for public consultation with the way they've already set it up. We need to move forward. We need to protect our island, and another year delay is just not it's not possible. We have to do this now.
All right, so I'm going to call the question then on the amendment to add the consultation and communication plan be developed, and finally the implementation would commence in 2023. All those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried with Councillors Day, Wolf, and Steves opposed. So now I'll call the question on the entire motion, 1 through 4. All those in favor? Those opposed? It is carried with Councillors Wolf and Steves opposed. All right, that brings us to the Circular Cities and Regions Initiative. Peter Russell, do you want to introduce that?
I have nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
I can say on this item, until recently, I was the chair of the National Zero Waste Council, and that's where this whole initiative emanates from. And it's something that they've been working on for a long time. And so I think there's a lot of benefit that we're going to get as a city out of this one. So can I have a motion, to adopt, moved and seconded?
Move recommendation.
Okay, so Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, through your worship, to staff. Just two short questions. And this comes from someone who was just at the Vancouver landfill yesterday, trying to dispose of something that nowhere in Richmond would accept, which is just one bag of drywall scraps. But anyway, so my questions were related to page 43. There was some major leadership points that were listed there, the 4 points. My questions are about the first one and the last one. I know about I actually checked it out today, the asphalt pilot project. Is there any more updates that can be given now, or are they coming soon? And maybe don't share the surprise secret of how well they were if you don't don't want to today. I was just hoping there'd be a little update on how they survived over the winter. And then my second one was about the bottom point there, and actually related to the last item of discussion a few councillors brought up. Let's Talk Richmond. I'm curious what other robust internal and external engagement activities would be listed in that if we were to further break apart the platforms used. So those are my two questions. Thanks.
Through the chair, maybe I'll respond to the second question and allow time for my colleagues in engineering to provide an update on number 5 road. There was a fair bit of internal external consultation, mainly done through the procurement policy that was just revised. But that included not just looking at procurement, but we also had extensive engagement with cities from around the world, Amsterdam, London, where we broadly talked around circular economy and city initiatives, as well as procurement. We held a large stakeholder workshop in 2019, I believe it was. Prior to the pandemic, we had over 30-some local vendors that supply services to the city that attended that meeting. So a lot of our work has been focused mainly around the circular economy initiative around the purchasing policy, but we would be able to build on that work that we've done.
Okay, and John Irving, can you comment on the number 5 road project, or Milton Chan?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Wolf. It's performing well so far. However, it's too early to know what the long-term performance is going to be. But so far, no issues.
Milton, aren't we in the process of using the same type of process or the pilot program on a lesser street, like a little used street, like a neighborhood street? And so then you can compare the performance on number 5 road with the interior street and also get further perspective from that point of view?
Yes, that is correct. So as part of this year's paving program, we will be doing a local street with the high wrap asphalt.
All right. John Irving?
Mr. Chair, I would add as well, yeah, we've included this specification in this year's procurement for the paving program. So we will have the ability, hopefully with a good response from the private sector on that, to more broadly apply this solution where we see fit.
Good. Okay, let's call the question then on the motion. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried. Then we have the Sister City Advisory Committee 2020 year in review. Mike Romas, what would you like to add to the report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing to add to the report, but happy to answer any questions.
Move the recommendation.
So moved to receive, moved and seconded. Any discussion, questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Then we go to the one that was added, the food trucks in Steveston. And I'll go to Councillor McNulty for this. I've got a suggested wording for it, but Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. It's come up from a number of businesses in Steveston about mobile food trucks coming into Steveston, renting parking lots from various owners in Steveston and carrying on business there. And I'd like to refer this to staff with the propriety of mobile food trucks in Steveston and the propriety of being able to operate out of a parking lot, people being able to sublet their parking for their other business to food trucks, and that staff consult with the Steveston Business Association and other business associations regarding the need for additional food trucks in Steveston on a regular basis.
May I suggest the wording for this would be that we would refer to staff to analyze the need and provide options for the regulation of mobile food trucks in Steveston, including the need to consult with local merchants. How would that work?
That would work.
All right.
The key, Your Worship, is if we did allow them, which we do, we allow mobile vendors in our community, is where they locate.
Right.
and they're locating on private property, but that puts the private property, in my opinion, in jeopardy, because the parking lot is supposed to be for the parking for the business that is supposed to be carried on there. The parking spaces are being taken up by mobile trucks and obviously jeopardizing the intent and the zoning of that particular business.
Okay, so that's moved and seconded. Before we get into more discussion, I think that there's another aspect to this, is that the merchants who are located in Steveston pay really good dollar, like top dollar, for the rental of their premises. And, they pay taxes and they support the community in many, many different ways. And I'm not sure, like, we dealt with this probably 10, 12 years ago when on July 1st, the ice cream bicycles were coming to Steveston and how to integrate them. I think that this is the same issue, but on a far larger scale, whether it's fair that the mobile food trucks should be able to go in like that with really no contribution to anything, very low overhead, and pick off some of the best business opportunities for the restaurant merchants. So I think we just need to take a look at it and see what staff says. So, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody and Councilor McNulty. I agree 100% that we need to refer this to staff. My problem is I don't think this goes quite far enough. If you go down to Portland, Oregon, they actually have a food truck alley. It's just like a street where it's all businesses that are like offices mostly during the day, but nobody's there at night. And so what they've done is they've brought all the food trucks together, and it's now become a gathering place, almost like a night market mentality. So I think we need to take it more than just Steveston. This issue could be an issue anywhere in Richmond. And the other thing I thought about is, like, if we did a food truck alley, I'm thinking someplace like Horseshoe Way, where there's nothing going on at night. Everything shuts down. It's mostly warehouses. And then the other thing I wanted to add to this motion is that I think that we need to have a rule that you can't put a food truck anywhere near restaurants. Let's put it out at the end of Berry Point. Let's put it out at Iona Beach. Let's put it out at McDonald Beach, where there is no place to buy any food. Then you're providing a really valuable service to the public. So I think the referral is good, but we need to take it a little bit further.
In partial answer to what you suggest, the idea of location analysis, that would be part of the general referral. They can say, this area is appropriate, this isn't appropriate. Like for the ice cream vendors, that was always a problem. And when we were looking at it in the city center, you couldn't have a muffins on a mobile vendor when you had a muffin shop right beside, we had the Starbucks right beside it. It wasn't fair competition. So I think that that's going to be included in that. In terms of, from my point of view, in terms of looking at the whole city, I don't think that that's a bad idea. It's just that I think we need to get the answer back for this summer. And we can look at more creative ideas as time goes along. But, we're going to have to move very smartly if we're going to have rules in place for this summer, which is, I think what we've got to do. We've got them there now. So the question is what to do with them, if anything. All right, so we'll go to Councillor McPhail, then Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just similar to the last discussion, I know that, food trucks are really popular, and some of the issues that are experienced in Steveston right now with the good weather is the crowd. So that's one issue. But I'm hoping that through this, that staff can look at opportunities that other cities are looking at. Like I believe it's New Westminster. They have a food truck weekend. A couple times, I think it's maybe once a month or a couple times a month, and it was during the summer. So again, to that point, are there other opportunities where food trucks could go maybe not in Steveston, other places in the city. And if not, if we can't get that ready for the summer, maybe that could be a longer-term project because they are so popular and people are looking, they have like almost a cult following, some of these trucks. Thank you.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you. I also agree with a lot of what's just been said. I think it's important that we, create opportunities for some of these new businesses and food trucks, but I think we also need to make sure that we're protecting the existing businesses and coming up with some interesting things for them. And I think what we really need to focus on at this point as well is to figure out what kind of things we're going to do with our traffic management plans and work with the businesses in each area. So I know it's going to be a lot of work for staff, but I think it's important to get them together, have them in various forums, create some times for them to come together, hear what they have to say. What streets do they want closed? Where do they want the city to put some picnic tables? What can we do to support them there? I think us spending a lot of time trying to figure out how food trucks can make money is maybe a kick in the teeth to many of our existing businesses that have fought through a tough winter, trying to keep their doors open, trying to, suddenly dealing with the closures of the last week. I heard from one restaurateur that as soon as the closure came, they were just receiving a shipment of green groceries. They were also going to receive one the following day and the day after, and then he had to still phone and tell all his staff that they didn't have work for 3 weeks, and he didn't know when they were going to have work again. And so I think, we need to work with the communities and sort of identify different neighborhoods of where there's a group of businesses doing this. We have to take our patio program a little bit further and say, okay, what are we going to do to support this? And then if we want to do something with the food trucks, then we have to consider where that is and what makes sense and have that as part of the conversation with some of those other businesses as well. Because sometimes when you bring in some of the food trucks, it does create that excitement and there's, it just adds more business to the area. So, there's a balance there that I think can be struck with the neighborhoods, and I don't think we want to just foist food trucks onto any one neighborhood.
Okay, Councillor Steves. No, sorry, Councillor Wolf first, then Councillor Steves.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I could get you to please repeat what the wording was that you mentioned, because I still don't have anything in writing for this, so before I ask my question.
Maybe I could ask the clerk what you got down?
Refer to staff for analysis the need and provide the regulation for mobile food trucks in Steveston, including the need to consult with local merchants.
No, I'm going to ask, can they hear you when you're back there? I'm going to ask you.
Yes, I heard.
I'm going to ask you to say that slower.
To refer to staff for analysis the need and to provide regulation for mobile food trucks in Steveston, including the need to consult with local merchants.
There's one thing you missed out, and that's to provide options. So it's analyzing the need and to provide options for the regulation of mobile food trucks. So that's the wording.
Thank you for that clarification and the additional adjustment there at the end. I notice who's on the call. I don't see Katie Furlong or Lloyd B., and they're two staff who've provided information on previous items related to Steveston patio fronts and the one-way use of the roadway. So I was hoping to ask staff a question right now. Do they feel this is necessary? Because this came on us, and I'm not sure if there's anyone on staff who can clarify, is this unnecessary?
Katie Furlong is on the call.
Okay. Is this necessary, or are these things already being done? Are you able to?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, if you're referring to the pilot initiative last summer where there were changes made to the street network in Steveston Village, the conclusion that staff made was that there was not sufficient demand for or local support to do that again this year in 2021.
Thank you. Through your worship to staff, like we've just approved this first item on the agenda tonight was 65% outdoor patio. Could you comment on the use of patio and how that might enhance the local vendors as opposed to needing the food trucks in Steveston when it's already crowded, as many of them transition to doing takeout, as well as the limited outdoor patio? And then my second part to that, as Councilor Day said, we strategically looked at other places. Now, I'm not sure if Carly can comment on related to bylaws. So we've had some letters about food trucks that are impeding on local business. Have they been given other locations where they can go?
Okay, before Carly comments on that, I think the answer is in the referral motion. It's analyzing the need. So do we have a need for the food trucks? Do we have a need for regulation? And also, in terms of what's to be done, it's a matter of providing the options for what can be done and where it can be done. Carly?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, there are 2 licensed food trucks in Steveston right now, and prior to getting their license, they went through an approval process, and in that approval process, we looked at the zoning and approved land use. So they are located on properties that are approved for restaurants, so they met that requirement. There is also requirements in our business regulation bylaw that these food trucks not be located adjacent or within the line of traffic to a business that sells similar goods. So we also ensured that that was in place, and it was on that basis that these 2 food trucks got licensed. We don't, to answer another question, we don't assist them in finding a location. It is up to them to find a location to meet the zoning requirements and the business regulation requirements. But right now, our bylaws are structured such that if they do meet those requirements, they are eligible for a license.
Okay, Councillor Steves.
Thanks. I support the referral, but when staff were looking into it, maybe if you look at the what we decided 10 or 12 years ago, because at that time, I believe we made a request that the food trucks should be buying local products, BC products and Richmond products to go into the food they served. And my memory doesn't tell me exactly what we said, but I know we had some requirement to that. I don't know whether they've been doing any of that or not, but maybe you just check out and see what we were asking them to do. I don't think we made it mandatory, but certainly I think it was a request.
Fair enough. Now, I don't know who on staff would answer this question for me, but how quickly can something come back in terms of recommendations? I've said before, we've got the issue now. If it is a problem, we need to deal with it. If it's not a problem, then I guess it's not urgent. But can any staff, Carly or anybody else, talk about, how quickly this can come back?
To your worship, how quickly it comes back, I suppose, depends on how broad the referral is. So I'm not sure about the staff time available to go to this, but I can comment on the if we wanted to make changes, it would require bylaw changes. So it would require 4 readings of council and public notification period within the bylaw change itself, in addition to whatever time is needed for the policy work and the public consultation requested.
Yeah, it's all very imprecise, isn't it? All right, so let's call the question on the motion, the referral motion. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody opposed? Okay, so that's carried. All right, I think that's it for GP. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Move adjournment.
Okay, we're now adjourned. And we'll go to the Finance Committee. It's an abbreviated revised agenda. Does everybody have it? Anybody not have this revised agenda? Staff have just simply taken a couple of items off the agenda, that's all.
Oh.
All right, so I'll call to order the Finance Committee. May I have a motion on the minutes? Yeah. Moved and seconded. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor, opposed, carried. Development cost charges report. Cindy Gilfillan, you want to introduce that?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is the standard annual reporting requirement for DCCs that we are required to do through the Local Government Act.
Move the recommendation.
Okay, moved and seconded. More comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. The next one, just hang on a second. So that was the annual development cost charges report. This one is the development cost charges imposition bylaw for the inflationary update. Venus Nigan, anything to add to your report?
Through the chair, I've got nothing to add.
Move the recommendation.
Okay, that's moved and seconded. Any comments on that one? Okay, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And that brings us to the procurement report. So David Aarons is the staff person on this one. Anything to add to your report?
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing further to add.
Move the recommendation.
So that's moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And someone move adjournment. Okay, we're now adjourned. And that brings us to the special council meeting. See, I remembered it this time. I just have to find it. So I'll call it back to order. The only item on the agenda is to sort out that administrative problem we had when we got to public hearing. I'm told that there's nothing new on this. This is a housekeeping type of situation. But the thought was it's better to deal with it now than to try and deal with it on the fly at the public hearing. So may I have a motion? Let's see now.
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, we can do this as one motion? Yes, she says. Any discussion or comments on this? Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be opposed to this. I think this really should be going to a public hearing, not a surprise snap council meeting like this is right now.
It is going to the public.
Yeah. Okay. So that would be the very next public hearing?
Yeah, that's the whole idea.
Okay. Well, as I did at the previous committee level and council level, I'm still opposed to it. I'm not going to change my direction now. Positive to hear. I guess the one positive is there will be at the next public hearing, because I think that the severity of this change is just insurmountable. What we're going to allow people to access without any proven farming background. As long as they have a farming plan that they paid for, they'll be able to. Sorry, I was getting interrupted there. The bylaw language of what this changes to is not conducive to many other strategies of the city. Yes, it supports farming first, which is maybe an unfortunate title of this report, because it puts farming first and farming ignoring everything else. And when looking into the tipping fee rates and the ESA, there's no staff are still unable to demonstrate an area where an ESA was returned back to ESA, environmental sensitive area status, after something fell through. Right? Why? Because it's next to impossible to do that. So what this does today is just further erode so many other objectives and leadership that our city was working towards. So I'll be opposed to it now, and we'll see if the public acknowledges how severe this is. So, thank you.
All right. So I'll call the question then on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? It's carried with Councillor Wolf opposed. Someone want to move adjournment? Okay.
Move adjournment.
We're now adjourned.